Laging drained? Pharmaton Energy Plus. Powered by ginseng, plus 40 vitamins and minerals.
Preferably, probably the first craze that you want to get is going to be an extremely useful core unit for the rest of your game, so it's pretty important to grab Crazed Cat whenever you can. Now first thing first, before I actually start into how to win Crazed Cat, first thing that I want to remind you is that even if you are not confident that you can beat Crazed Cat yet, I would still very highly recommend to, at the very least, enter the stage and exit the stage. If you do that, you would be able to re-challenge Crazed Cat using Catamins without having to wait for the schedule. Speaking of the schedule, Crazed Cat only appears on either the 3rd of every month or 3 days before the month ends during Crazed Festival. Since there's a pretty big gap there, if you at one point feel like that you are able to challenge Crazed Cat after all, you're gonna have to wait for a very long time, and that's why I recommend to unlock the Catamin stage first, so that you'll be able to fight Crazed Cat anytime without having to be constricted with the schedule. With that aside, let's begin on the Crazed Cat guide. Now if you're worried that if my save file is over leveled, don't be too worried. This is an extremely old footage back when I just started Returner mode. Some of the basics does have pluses on it, but not really that big. The research power and the money power are still really low, and most of them are not super vital. The highest plus that I have right now is +7 on Dragon, and even then, that's not going to be that big of a change. So even if your Dragon is lower level, that's fine. Now before I move on to the lineup that I use, I want to move to the stage overview first. The stage starts off with infinite amount of doges and snakes, pretty much coming in non-stop, and the enemies won't actually spawn until you hit the base. You can take your sweet time and gather up money and resources beforehand. Once you hit the base, that's where the main enemy starts to appear. The boss Crazed Cat and their support, Laboyne and Teacher Bear. So you can see on the footage, most of the time, the order of standing is Crazed Cat and then Teacher Bear and then Laboyne. Crazed Cat is a pretty mid-ranged enemy with constant attack. Even if his attack aren't super devastating, it's usually enough to one-shot most meat shields. The supports, Teacher Bear and Laboyne, are pretty high range enemies. Teacher Bear have the same range as Lex or Paris Cat, meanwhile Laboyne has the same range as Dragon Cats, but they are all outranged by Bahamut Cat, and pretty much most ranged Ubers. The Laboyne and the Bear will also spawn infinitely. Every certain amount of time, another Laboyne will spawn, another Bear will spawn, and it'll just keep on spawning. One thing to keep in mind is that both Teacher Bear and Laboyne drops a lot of money when they are killed. This is very important, as I will talk about this later on. So that's pretty much about the overview of the stage. Now let's get on to the lineup and the strategy itself. As for the lineup, this is the lineup that I use to actually win the stage. There are a lot of things that you can do with the lineup. As you can see, I leave 2 spaces open, leave to your interpretation on what you can use. Oh yeah, Maneko is also there just because I have an empty slot. Honestly, you can just replace her with anything. You can also change some of the units that they already put in into some other units that you feel might fit, which I'll also talk about later. Before we talk about what units that you can put in, I need to actually explain about why this lineup is like this first. To a lot of people, this lineup might be a little bit weird, mainly because this lineup consumes a lot of money. Look at the top row of the lineup first. The top row mainly consists of what we call as meat shields. These are mainly like cannon fodders that are only pretty much used to stall the enemies. You might have already known this if you have beaten Bunbun on EOC 3. However, I bring 5 of them, and 2 of them, being very unconventional, Sumo and Ninja, are not really usually people's choice of meat shields. However, since they are very accessible and they're not really bad units to actually purchase anyways, I use them here. If you have other better meat shields that you can use in, such as upgraded rocker.
Gusto mo maging superbot? Nasa determinasyon yan.